Hello everyone, welcome you back in my geography classes. Today we are going to start with the chapter of interior of the earth for class 11. So as we talk about the interior of the earth, it means we will discuss about the inside of the earth. Now we all know that the crust, mantle and core makes up the interior of the earth. Now there is a constant change which is going on in the inside of the earth. Now, knowing about this constant change, it is very important to understand the interior of the earth. Like what is there in the interior of the earth. Now we can see that around us there are different landscapes that we can observe. Now these different landscapes that we can see around us are result of constant exogenous and endogenous processes. So the landscape that we can see around us are the result of constant change or constant processes which are going on, that is endogenous processes and the exogenous processes. Now endogenous process means inside. So endo means inside, the processes which is acting on the interior of the earth. And what do you mean by exogenous? Means the processes which are working outside or at the surface of the earth. We can also call this as endogenic process or endogenic forces, and this as exogenic process or exogenic forces. So now let us understand about the endogenous and the exogenous processes. The endogenous processes on earth. Now what are endogenic processes? Now endogenic processes are geological processes that occurs beneath the surface of the earth. That means the processes which occurs inside our earth. It is associated with energy originating in the interior of the solid earth. The ground we live on is moving all the time, and the forces within the earth that causes the ground to move are called the endogenic forces. Now the endogenic forces are divided into slow movements, that is diastropism, and sudden movements. Now the slow movements are again redivided into vertical, that is epirogenic or continental building, and horizontal, that is orogenic or mountain building. The epirogenic is divided into upward and downward movement, and orogenic is divided into forces of compression, that is example fold mountains, forces of tension, the example of fault mountains. The sudden movements are divided into the volcanism and the earthquakes. So the example of endogenous processes are the volcanic activities, the earthquakes, the folding, the faulting due to the tectonic activities that is occurring inside the earth. Let us know about the exogenous processes on the earth. What are exogenic processes? The exogenic processes are the processes that takes place at or near the earth's surface. That means the processes which acts outside the earth's surface. These are the processes which makes the surface wear away. These are the processes which are very destructive as they are responsible for degradation and sculpting the surface of the earth. Now these processes are divided into weathering, mass movements, erosion and deposition. Weathering is subdivided into physical weathering, chemical weathering and biological weathering. Mass movements subdivided into slow mass movements, rapid mass movements, which are again subdivided into creep, solifluction, earth flow, mud flow, debris avalanches, landslide, slump, debris slide, rock slide. We have erosion, which can be caused by the running water, groundwater, glacier, wave and currents, and the winds. And the deposition, which again can be caused by the running water, groundwater, glaciers, wave and currents, and the winds. So the examples of the exogenic processes are weathering, erosion, transportation, and denudation. Now this processes changes the outer shape of the landscape. So these are the processes which cause the change in the shape of the landscape. So what are exogenic and endogenic forces? Now, that means the Earth's surface that is being continuously subjected to by external forces originating within the Earth's atmosphere and by the internal forces from within the Earth. The external forces are known as the exogenic forces and the internal forces are known as the endogenic forces. Now, after understanding about the endogenic and the exogenic forces, now the question arises that why there is a need, or what is the importance of knowing about the interior of the earth? Like, why do you need to know about the interior of the earth? Now, the answer of this question is related to the human beings. It is largely due to the fact that human settlements are largely influenced by the physiographic region. So where the human beings will construct their settlements, where they will live, it will depend on the physiographic region. That is why we will see that in the plains, we have densely populated regions. The plains are referred as the densely populated regions, and more number of people live in the plains compared to the mountains, where the population is scattered or isolated. Now, it is very important for us to understand the natural calamities which will affect the human settlements, which will lead to destruction of their livelihoods and also of their settlements and their properties, like the flood, tsunami, earthquake. Isn't it important for us to know that why does the earth shake, or how the tsunami waves are generated? Why do we need to know it? Because if we will get an idea, or if you get to know about that, how the tsunami waves are generated, or why do the earth shake, then we can formulate different mitigation techniques by which we can protect the human beings, we can protect their settlements. So it is very important to know about the natural calamities which will affect the human beings as a whole. Now, we all know that the radius of the earth is 6371 kilometer. What is the equatorial radius? It is 6378 kilometer, and the polar radius is 6357 kilometer. Now, we know the radius of the earth is 6371 kilometer. Now, no one can go at the center of the earth. So if no one can go at the center of the earth, then how the person will observe? So how we will have the observation, or how we will collect samples or materials by which we can get an information about the interior of the earth? So the question rises that how the scientists will get to know about the materials that are found in the earth, or the materials that actually form the interior of the earth at different depth. What are the composition of materials that are found in the interior of the earth? It is not possible to know as we cannot go in the center. So how do we obtain the information? Now, most of the information that we have about the interior of the earth, they are based on estimations and interferences. But yes, we do have other sources of information. Those are direct sources. And these sources of information can be used for analysis of information. So there are two ways or two sources of information by which we can gather different evidences or information about the interior of the earth. Now, what are the two sources of information? They are the direct sources like the rocks that we get from mining or from the surface of the earth, the integrated ocean drilling projects or the deep ocean drilling projects, and volcanic activity. These are the direct sources of information. Now, what are the indirect sources? Temperature, pressure, density, gravitation or gravity anomaly, the meteors, magnetic field, and the seismic activities. So there are two sources of information, that are direct sources and the indirect sources. Firstly, let's know about some of the direct sources. Under direct sources, we have rocks that we get from mining or from the outer surface of the earth. Now, these are the strong sources which we use to know about the interior of the earth. But it is generally said that if we get some rocks direct from the interior, we get better information because the surface rocks undergoes constant weathering due to rain, wind. Hence, it is not as good as an interior rock from a mine. We also have many scientific projects around the world that penetrate into deeper depth to explore the conditions. There are projects like Deep Ocean Drilling Project, Integrated Ocean Drilling Project. Now, these projects help to gather a large volume of information through the analysis of the materials collected at different depths. Now, let us get to know an important fact of information. The deepest drill is at Kola, which is in the Arctic Ocean. It has far reached at a depth of 12 kilometers. Now, the thickness of the Earth's crust, the continental crust, is 35 kilometers, and the thickness of the oceanic crust is 5 kilometers. So, as we talk about the 12 kilometer, it is not half of the continental crust. It has been the deepest drill, yet it has been the deepest drill till date. Another way to analyze the material that comes out automatically from the interior is the volcanic activities. Now, the volcanic eruption forms another source of obtaining the direct information. So whenever there is any volcanic eruption, the magma that comes out is collected as a sample and is tested and analyzed to determine its components. However, it is difficult to assume the depth of the source of such magma, meaning from where it comes. Is it from the core or from any other layer? So, there is some limitation when we quest our knowledges is dependent on direct sources. Now, let us know about some indirect sources that gives information about the interior of the earth. The temperature and pressure increases as we go from the surface towards the interior in deeper depth. Now, this information is observed through mining activities. We know that the density of the materials also increases with depth. Now, as we have all these facts, the scientists have developed an estimate the values of temperature, pressure, and density of materials at different depths in respect to the total thickness of the earth. It is also possible to find out the rate of change of these characteristics. Now, on the basis of the above facts, the scientists have made certain estimates on the thickness of the crust, mantle, and core. They have estimated the thickness of the crust is 5 to 70 kilometer. The thickness of mantle is 2900 kilometer, and the thickness of core is 3500 kilometer. Now, again, these are estimations that are based on approximate values. That is why we refer this as the indirect source of information about the interior of the earth. Now, the another source of information is the meteors. Now, let us know what are meteoroids and meteors. The meteoroids are objects in space that range in size from dust grains to small asteroids. Now, when these meteoroids enter the Earth's atmosphere, as they come in with a high speed, they get burned up in the Earth's atmosphere due to friction and are called the meteors. Now, since the meteors are not a part of the interior of the Earth, so the question arises that why they are being used as an indirect source of information about the interior of the Earth. It is believed that meteors are the solid bodies which has developed out of materials same to our planet Earth. So, the materials that are available as their structure is similar to that of Earth, so it is used for analysis, and hence it becomes yet another source of information about the interior of the Earth. The other indirect sources includes gravitation, magnetic field, and seismic activity. Now, coming to the gravitation. The gravitation force is not the same at different latitudes on the surface. As we know that the gravitation force is greater near the poles and is less at the equator. And what is the reason for this? And the reason is because the Earth is not a perfect sphere. It is bulged at its center. So the distance from its center at the equator is comparatively more than the poles. So the gravity keeps on changing as we move from one place to another. But it is maximum to the place that is nearer to the center. As a result, the gravity is more at the poles and least at the equator. Now, this change in gravity reading is called the gravity anomaly. The gravity value differs also according to the mass of materials. And we know that the mass of materials are unevenly distributed over the Earth. Now, the materials which are found at the poles must have higher mass than the materials which are found at the equator. That is why the gravitational force is much higher in the poles compared to the equator. Now, another indirect source of information regarding the interior of the Earth is the magnetic field. Now, let us get an idea about the Earth's magnetic field. What do you mean by the Earth's magnetic field? It is defined by the north and the south poles that generally align with the axis of rotation. The intensity of the magnetic field is greatest near the poles because here it is vertical and it is weaker near the equator, as here it is the horizontal. Now the magnetic field is generated by the electric currents due to the motion of the convection currents of a mixture of molten iron and nickel that is supposedly present in the outer core. So with the help of this magnetic survey, we get an information about the distribution of magnetic materials in the crustal portion and thus provide information about the distribution of materials in this part. Now, another indirect source of information is the seismic activity, which is one of the most important sources of information about the interior of the earth. The seismic activity is also referred as the earthquake. The earthquake produces different types of seismic waves. Now, each type of waves move through different materials differently. The waves can reflect or bounce off boundaries between different layers. Now let us talk about the two waves, P waves and the S waves. Now the P waves can travel through three materials: solid, liquid and the gaseous materials. Whereas the S waves can only travel through the solid materials. So as we will notice the movement of these P waves and S waves, we will notice that the P waves are bending as they pass from one layer to another. That means as they pass from solid, liquid to gas. Whereas in terms of S waves, we will notice that it is disappearing after traveling to a certain distance, as we know that it can only travel through the solid materials. So it gives us an information that our earth is made up of a solid crust, a liquid mantle and a gaseous core. I hope all of you understood what we discussed in today's video. We learned about the endogenic and the exogenic processes. We learned about the direct and indirect sources of information that helps us to know about the interior of the earth. So don't forget to read the NCERT, don't forget to read in between the lines. Follow the PDF that has been provided in the description box. If you like my content, if you like my video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you have any suggestion or any problem, do comment on the comment box given below. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for the further notifications of my upcoming videos. Till then, stay tuned to my channel. I will be back soon with a new video on the topic earthquake. Stay safe and stay at your home. Thank you.